All right, welcome to Alabama Gristmill, and I am Mike, and welcome to my co-host Donna Causey.
Hi.
How you doing today?
Doing good, even on a rainy day.
Yes, those ain't rainy days where April showers bring May flowers, but also bring some tornadoes in the Alabama region. I guess we're all familiar with.
That's a sad thing at this time of year.
You got James Spann in our northern Alabama in the Birmingham area. He keeps us pretty safe or informed with the tornado situation.
I don't know what we do without James Spann. You know, he's brought us through many a tornado. Even down to the street it's going on.
Well, there's many tornadoes and stories in Alabama, and the one we're going to talk about today is one that kind of hit the Tuscumbia area and how it was almost wiped out by a tornado.
Oh, yeah. They have tornadoes a lot up in North Alabama and Colbert County, and this one was really kind of a bad time for it to do it, though. It's sad.
Go ahead and tell us about the story and go ahead and start this off, and let's hear a little bit about where Tuscumbia almost got wiped out.
Okay. Tuscumbia is a very old town in northeast central Colbert County, and in 2010, the population was 8,423. And if everybody knows the home of Helen Keller, if you're familiar with Helen Keller, she was a very famous lady from Alabama. She was the deafblind author, activist, and lecturer later in life after she learned how to communicate through Anne Sullivan, her teacher. If you ever watched the film The Miracle Worker, you'll know the true story of her life. And she has a remarkable story. In fact, we've got more about her on the website, Alabama Pioneers. If you want to know a little bit more, there's some interesting anecdotes about her life that you probably don't know about. In fact, she even had a boyfriend during her time. So you can find more about it on the website. But that's not the story today. More of it today is about Tuscumbia. Tuscumbia was first settled in the 1700s, so it's a very, very old town. And the Chickasaws, the French settled it around in the 1700s until their town was kind of gone. And the Chickasaws settled it a little bit later on, and they settled around the area of a big spring near the town. Then it was followed by Michael Dixon's family in 1815, and that's when the whites kind of came in and drove Native Americans off, and they formed a town and a village that really grew quite rapidly. In 1820, the town was incorporated as the Okokoposa. Now, I hope I have that right. Okokoposa. And it's one of the Alabama's oldest towns that we can talk of today. The name was changed to Big Spring in 1821, and then in 1822 it was changed again and named Tuscumbia after the chief rainmaker of the Chickasaws. The town continued to grow and really do well because a river landing was established there 2 miles from town in 1824. And after that, the 1830s brought in the Frontier Railroad, and the Tuscumbia Railroad was formed at that time. And many buildings of that time are still occupied by different businesses of today.
I can only imagine how much the town really took off at that time with the railroad and all.
Oh, it did. Actually, the Tuscumbia Railroad has a unique status in that it was the first railroad on the American frontier that was formed and became successful, if you can believe it or not. The Tuscumbia has a remarkable history, as you can see, from just that. It became the county seat in 1867. During the Civil War, it was really famous because that railroad, it was a railroad hub for the Confederacy, so you can imagine it was the target, of course, for the Union Army. And it got a lot of attacks from time to time. So Tuscumbia took about 20 years just to recover from the damage that they incurred during the Civil War. Even though they'd grown so much, they'd practically doubled in size during that time because of the railroad.
Well, being hub in the Civil War era, I mean, that town would make a town pretty happening place.
And it's good for you as a Confederate town, but it's not good if the Union are trying to take care of you, and wipe you out, too, at the same time. Because they wanted to stop the rails in the South.
Well, I imagine it was really good for the financial aspect of the city, so they're making a lot of money.
Right. It was good, really good. In fact, it was the oldest commercial building districts in Alabama that's still going today. Well, they were really feeling great. In fact, there was a write-up in the paper in 1874 that they were free of debt. It was written up in the Birmingham Iron Age newspaper. And for that time, for a young town that's growing as rapidly as it was doing great. And it must have been devastating when something happened in November 1874 to take that away. It was just a few months later. The whole town was hit by a tornado and was nearly wiped
being
out.
a debt-free town in that time was probably a significant achievement, as it would be today even.
Right. Here you are, you can disclaim it. And
becoming peak of success and being a successful town, then Mother Nature comes by and decides to give a little visit.
Yes, that's what happened. The tornado and wiped it out in just seconds. They said it didn't last but a minute or two. And the right up in the Birmingham Iron Age was first they just said, a tornado hit Tuscumbia.
Well, when did this tornado hit?
November 1874. It was just devastating.
That was a late in the season tornado, being almost wintertime.
Yeah, it was in the year. Usually they're around March or something like that. But we have a season. Did I tell you that? We have a November season. And I guess it hit in that season. It just...
But it's even rarer today, having a late season tornado.
Oh, yeah. We have certain seasons when the cold air is changing and all. We get pretty educated by the James Fan and the other forecasters and meteorologists in Birmingham. They are really great now on helping us with that. But anyway, back to the story. The news reporter went down to the city a few weeks later and he reported back what he saw, and it was just really, really sad. It's 11 people were killed, and sounds pretty lucky considering how bad it was. It came in. They said it came in the Southwest, and they had just built a new fairground and racetrack and a clubhouse, and they were all just completely gone. Nothing was left. Even beautiful trees, live oaks that were huge, were just pulled up and fences down. As you can imagine, you see that during tornadoes. But they had also just built a brand new iron railroad bridge, and they said it was iron. It was pretty heavy, you can imagine, but it was pulled up and thrown into the creek, and even the foundations were destroyed. They said it was so bad, and thrown into the creek. Luckily, a train was coming about the time the tornado hit. It hit around 6:30 in the evening, and a train was coming along, and the engineer was saying, hey, it's looking kind of hectic around here, I might better slow down a little bit because I'm worried about that bridge ahead. And his thinking was right, because he slowed enough that it was kind of hard stopping because the rails were wet. So he had a little difficulty doing it. And then the engine went over and the baggage car went over. But the passenger cars were managed to stay up on the land. So that saved many, many lives. But luckily, the engineer escaped with cuts and bruises, but the baggage master was a little bit more severely hurt. It took the engineer 2 hours. It took him 2 hours to get him out of the car, though, because he was so badly mangled. After it hit the train, it went into the city of Tuscumbia, and cotton warehouse got hit, and it was so bad and scattered so far that when people came on the train later on that month to see it through the area, they thought it had snowed. It was so much that cotton
That's
everywhere.
crazy.
I mean, it didn't
that
look
much
like,
cotton to make it look like it snowed.
It didn't look right, so they just knew it had to be snow. They didn't realize the tornado had been through.
Well, that was an amazing sight, got much cotton in the town to make it look like a winter wonderland.
It would, with that much. That tells you how much cotton was going up, being raised in that area at the time. Population at that time was not but around 2,000 people, and they say in the town area, and they say only about 500 didn't have damage to their homes. But like today, when a tornado hits, it'll wipe out one house, and the one right next door is not even having anything touched. That's this freak thing about tornadoes. They say about 100 buildings downtown Tuscumbia that were destroyed, and you can imagine how many that would be back then. I mean, you're talking about a small town of about 2,000 people, and 100 of them destroyed.
Yeah, probably didn't really have that many buildings there.
Right. And then all of them got damaged some way, but 100 of them were completely destroyed. And debris was all over the main street, just from the buildings and everything, everything you can imagine. And people, of course, they thought, well, I'll save my house. I mean, my furnishings in my house, so I'm going to run in and get them all out, and then at least I have that to start with. Well, they did, and they put them all out on the street. But then all of a sudden, it was just torrential rain, like happens with many tornadoes. And it said the water was so high that it went knee deep in the streets. Can you imagine knee deep water on top of the...
I guess having the river right there really added to the flooding as well, too.
It just quickly rose up. And so here they lost their house and they lost all their belongings on top of it. Then he went on and drove through town, and he saw the Catholic church that they had just built. It was a brand new church, well built building, and he said it was just a pile of rubbish. And it was so badly damaged, the foundation was coming up and was hurled through the air.
Wow, even pulled up the foundation.
But then the other Protestant churches that were sitting right close by and across the street didn't get damaged. They didn't even have any windows broken. I bet it had some interesting comments about it in town. Oh, knowing what people would say, about other churches and the way they do, that's what they were probably doing. I bet the Catholics had a rough time
absolutely trying
to rebuild after that, I'm sure. But it's frustrating when you've just built something and you get and back then they didn't have insurance and everything. Like, you got to remember that this is a time when you didn't just call an insurance company and get everything rebuilt. You had to rebuild from scratch yourself. They also had a new high school that was a brick structure that cost about $300,000, and it was just totally destroyed, hurled to the ground. And they said not one brick was left in place. It was just totally destroyed. Then, sadly, some of the really nice residences, like the Hodgkins residence, it was a 2-story high, beautiful home, beautiful garden and everything. It was destroyed. And the man, John Hodgkins, and his wife and 4 children all died. And they were all found locked in each other's arms. It would be very, very sad. It just, nothing else you could do, I guess, but love your loved ones at the last moment.
All you can do is just hold on to each other and pray for the best.
Senator Moore, their senator from Tuscumbia, had a beautiful mansion there, and it was completely destroyed. And his wife and 2 children were killed, but he was not in town at the time. He was in Montgomery. So when he came back up and came home, they said he held up pretty well, He was going through the town, but when he got in front of his house, he just broke down and cried, and sobbed his heart out. And they said that he aged so much after that, he looked like he'd gained 15 years. During that time, just
I imagine,
because it broke his heart so much, and then he wasn't there, to be with his family.
That would be devastating.
Another beautiful building, one of the oldest in the state, was Winston Homestead. And what was strange about it, though, one side was completely blown away, while the other side stood just like nothing had ever touched it, Sadly, the Mrs. Winston was killed, and she was trying to go down the steps, and she just reached the door, and then the part that fell in on her. But she managed to struggle and get out of it, and lived a few days, or a little while, I don't know, a few days, but just lived shortly afterwards. But not very long, and she died too. But in a way, I told you about the tremendous rain that fell. That was just destroying all the belongings. In a way, it was kind of good, because back then it was November, so all the houses had fires going in their fireplaces, and of course they would have all burned up with the damage they had if the fire had escaped into the house, but the rain stopped the fires, and so it extinguished them all. So they would have lost completely everything, and every building would have been destroyed probably if that hadn't happened. So I guess it was a blessing in disguise, even though they still lost a lot.
Definitely. While it's good to have a flood, at least it had a bright side where it saved the rest of the town by putting out the fire.
Right. And you can imagine it was upward of $500,000, they say, that it cost to restore everything. That in just a few seconds, everything was gone. And $500,000 is a lot of money back then. It's not like it is now, but that's a lot of money for 2,000 people to kind of come up with. Here, you're debt free, you're doing fine, you got an exciting future, and it's all wiped out in just a second. And you don't have insurance, you don't have anything. You have to just rebuild from scratch.
Yeah, $500,000 today would be roughly around $10 million. So that's a significant amount for that size town.
That's the people of Tuscumbia, I guess. So they came back, and it's a really nice town today, really historic town, and they love their history. In fact, you can find out more. There's a Facebook page called Remember Tuscumbia, and they really have some wonderful articles and pictures of the past. And look it up, and if you're from Tuscumbia, you ought to know about it, because it's really a good sign.
I agree. The Facebook page, Remember Tuscumbia, is a wonderful resource, and you can see some great pictures of the history of Tuscumbia. So it's a good thing to visit.
It's and a very active page as well. I mean, they really get involved in their community. I've enjoyed. I've shared a lot of articles on the website from it because they dig down and find out more.
So after this sad story about Tuscumbia and how they were devastated, I hope you've got something a positive or uplifting story.
I have a fun story. I got a kind of a fun story that I discovered in the. I love to discover these little tidbits in the newspaper from time to time, and about the little articles that you never ever hear of. But this one was one about a man in the 1890s named Dr. Bennett, and he must have been quite a character in town. He played a game called Three Thimbles, and I guess this is what they used to do. You know, the game you play where you have these cups and you put a ball under it and you mix it all up, and then you try to...
Yeah, like the shell game you see on the street.
Yeah, that pretty well. They called it Three Thimbles. That's what it was called back then. And he used his knee. He just kept three thimbles around and placed them on his knee and put a little paper ball underneath it. So it was a miniature version. He enjoyed doing that and tricking people. They called him a magician rather than a gambler or something like that. He was described that way because he was a doctor, I guess, and they didn't want to call him a gambler. But anyway, he loved to play the game with people. And a lawyer tried it one time, and he paid $25 trying to guess and find that he couldn't ever get it. Anyway, another general tried to do it, and he didn't have money, so he had land instead of money. So he staked a quarter section of land, but of course he lost too, and that's a lot to lose, a quarter section of land, because he just knew the answer, but he didn't. Anyway, this Dr. Bennett would just defeat everybody, so he got to be kind of a reputation in town, and people would all be determined they could win, and a lot of them, like I said, didn't have money, but they had land, so he wound up acquiring most of Tuscumbia that way in town. And you can imagine what a lot of people started to think of him, because they would get angry, they'd lose their land in just a few minutes, and here they'd be in a mess, and they were becoming angrier and angrier. One time, a young boy had decided he knew the answer, so he didn't have anything, but he had his father's horse in town with him. So he bet Bennett that he could do it, and of course he lost too. And here he was taking the horse to Dr. Bennett, and Dr. Bennett quickly took it onto the livery stable. But then the word got out. The father found out, I guess, about what's going on, and he said that he stole his horse because his son didn't own it. He did, so he basically stole his horse. Bennett thought, well, he's a doctor, he didn't make much of it, but he wound up getting thrown in jail over it. Then he realized, hey, these people are getting kind of serious about this. So he had to go hire him an attorney, really get represented better, and it wound up being that he got acquitted at the trial, that he did lose the horse in a bet. But I guess he got kind of nervous, and he left town shortly after that. Went to Texas.
Yeah, he said, I'm going to get out of Dodge since everybody found out who he is and what he was up to.
Right. So, he wound up, he fought with Davy Crockett and wound up getting killed fighting the Mexicans. That was the last of him. But it's an interesting way why one man,
wow.
through all that, was acquiring all the property in Tuscumbia by his little thimble game. So I thought that was a neat little anecdote to Tuscumbia that I found to
absolutely
counteract the sad story of the tornado, But thankfully, Tuscumbia people are strong, and they pulled back from it and said, hey, we're going to rebuild the town, and they did, and they've really made it something today to be proud of. So that's the good thing about the story at the end.
All right, well, we're wrapping up this episode of Alabama Gristmill, and hopefully we'll end it with something happier here, and fun story. I'm glad we did.
Yeah, I had to find something happy. It seemed like that was such a sad story.
It's fun to get to go into some of the history of Tuscumbia that people may not know, and good anecdotes that are kind of interesting to hear about. Well, with that, we'll go ahead and wrap this episode up. And like we usually say, we'd love you to share and like, subscribe to the podcast, and come back and see all the episodes and listen back. We've built up a few episodes now, so you can go back and listen to the ones you've missed if you haven't got some out there. We appreciate that. We also, if we've got a new way to be a part of the Alabama Pioneer community, or the Footprints community, and that's by signing up to be a patron of Alabama Pioneers, and it would really help us out there. And you can find that on the link on the Alabama Pioneers webpage. Be a patron, and for the price of a cup of coffee, you can help us out, and you help us keep these podcasts going, and bring us a lot of other good, new, and exciting things out to us. So we just want to say goodbye and say farewell. And with that, we'll let Red Foley play us out. And so we'll see y'all later.
Bye-bye.
One-legged Joe dancing round on his toes, throws away his crutch and hollers, hey, let her go, oh honey.